Hello and welcome back to Umineko When They Cry, episode 13. Last episode, we woke in the morning of October 5th, which I didn't realize until after the fact, but I recorded that video on October 5th. And I'm really sad I missed that, because that was the ultimate coincidence, I think. But, yeah, so we've discovered that 6 people on this island are unaccounted for. And as we might recall from the epitaph on the first twilight, 6 will be chosen by the key as sacrifices. So, it's not looking good for our missing people. That is Kraus, Rudolph, Ava, Rosa, Shannon, and Goda. And Cannon has come in and reported that there's something interesting going on in the storehouse, or there's something interesting about the storehouse. What? I don't know. But we're gonna find out. The Rose Garden storehouse was a place that housed various tools used to manage the garden. It was definitely not a pretty building. Because of its appearance, it had been built so that it was hidden in a corner of the Rose Garden. Cannon, Genji, Ava, and Hideyoshi came cutting across the Rose Garden holding umbrellas. They entered a small path just off the Rose Garden, which was normally off limits for those appreciating the garden and only used by those maintaining it. As they dashed down that, the storehouse came into view in front of them. Oh, my cursor's gone. It was quite an old shed, and compared to the flawlessly perfect beauty of the Rose Garden, it was pretty seedy looking. It was easy to understand why it had been built in a hard-to-see place. Ava and Hideyoshi arrived at the storehouse long after Cannon and Genji. Ha! Gosh, you two sure are fast. I thought my heart was gonna explode. I never knew they had a storehouse way over here. But, what is that? When Ava looked where Cannon was pointing, she was at a loss for words. Noticing this, Hideyoshi also followed Cannon's finger and was likewise too shocked to speak. The entrance to the storehouse was a kind of shutter. And there, everyone suddenly realized why Cannon had been unable to find words to describe what they now saw. On the shutter, which was completely filthy from being exposed to wind and rain for so long, stuck right on it, there was something that looked like a strange dark red liquid. Oh man. Okay, it's not looking good for our missing friends and enemies. Go to mucus? Or maybe it was some sticky paint. An indescribably eerie shape was drawn on the shutter with some kind of ghastly substance. The rain had caused it to drip down like fresh blood leaking from an open wound. No more beating around the bush. Some kind of mark was drawn there, with a ghastly substance that looked like blood, in a shape that seemed to suggest something ominous. 2 circles were drawn there, and inside them was a design that looked like a cross. The 4 ends of the cross were widely exaggerated, and it looked like some kind of crest from somewhere around Europe. And in the cracks between these shapes, written closely packed together, were some unfamiliar characters, or possibly symbols. What a vulgar bit of graffiti. Could this be one of those? One of those magic circles used in demonic ceremonies? It wasn't surprising that Hideyoshi would say that about such a ghastly shape, drawn with a deep red dripping substance. When was this made? There was nothing drawn here when I came by yesterday, before it started raining. We must do something before anyone else sees this. If they laid eyes upon it, it would cause them great discomfort. That's right. Even though it's just a shed, I wouldn't want to leave such an unpleasant piece of graffiti alone for a second longer than I had to. There's some paint inside the storehouse. Let us paint over it temporarily as an emergency measure, then repaint it again someday when the weather is good. Genji remembered that he had just recently seen another scribble, and that it too had been made with a strange dark red substance of the same color as the one on Natsu's door. Oh dear. That must have been... That's right. He had seen it on the door to Natsu's room. Canon-kun, let's remove this scribble quickly and go back, okay? Even though it's just a storehouse, it's really irritating to have graffiti around the home I was brought up in. Yes, ma'am. I will take care of it immediately. Cannon squatted in front of the shutter and unlocked it. He then lifted it up with all of his strength. A boisterous noise resounded, and the eerie shape drawn on the shutter began to get sucked in through the top as the shutter was raised. At least for the time being, that ominous drawing disappeared from their direct gaze, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks to a kids program they came across, Maria was feeling much better. Battler and Jessica were poking fun at the kids' show at every turn, cackling together. George was enjoying the program with Maria from her perspective. Nanjo sat on the sofa by himself, passing the time by reading quietly. They heard hurried footsteps coming from the hallway. They were the footsteps of a single person. Did that mean it wasn't the group of four that had just left? It was Genji. Damn, Genji can move, I guess. It was very rare for Genji, who considered being out of breath a violation of a servant's virtues, to be gasping for air. He had probably come dashing back from outside the mansion. His shoulders were soaking wet, and he didn't have his usual trim appearance. When Genji noticed Nanjo looking at him, he gave a small, silent bow and quickly approached him. I'm getting a bad feeling. Dr. Nanjo, my apologies. Please, come with me. Quickly. What is the matter? As Genji whispered something into Nanjo's ear, Nanjo went pale. He rose from the sofa, trying not to be noticed by the children who were still engrossed by the TV, and the two of them rapidly left the parlor, muffling their footsteps. Just as they were about to exit the parlor, they came across Natsu, who was pushing a serving cart loaded with a tea set. Genji whispered something into Natsu's ear, and Natsu went pale too, in apparent shock. Then, leaving the serving cart where it was, the three of them dashed toward... There's so much dashing going on. Dashed towards the entrance. Is there not another word? Can we not look up a synonym for dashed? Or is dash really the only appropriate word we could use in this scenario? Because it's like, you know, we got Cannon dashing here, there, we got the group dashing to the storehouse, we got Genji dashing into the house, we got them dashing outside of the house. What? George noticed them running down the rose garden, through the window. What's that? Isn't that Genji said, and Dr. Nanjo, and that's not Natsuki, isn't it? What's up, Aniki? Maybe something happened. They looked terribly flustered. When Jessica and Maria saw that Ava, Hideyoshi, and Nanjo were no longer in their seats and that the serving car had been abandoned in the entrance to the parlor, they also realized that something was the matter. Could there have been some kind of accident? Let's go check it out. It's no fun if we're the only ones left out, right? For some reason, what Battler said sounded extremely indiscreet. But they couldn't deny that they were a little insecure and concerned after seeing the adults run off into the rain without regards to their appearance. Let's check it out, okay? I'm worried something might have happened. Jessica's uneasy words spoke for all of them. Hey, Maria, are you coming too? Or will you watch TV? Wanna watch TV? Let's go on without her. Maria-chan will be back soon. You keep watching TV, okay? By the time the kids made it outside, the adults were no longer in sight. But Jessica seemed to have a pretty good idea where they'd gone, judging by the direction they'd been running. Following Jessica, we ran through the rain-soaked rose garden. The wind seemed to suddenly get stronger. The malicious sound of thunder began to rumble like it had the previous night. It felt like an eerie something had surrounded the island and was trying to stop us from moving forward. Jessica, is there something over this way? I'm pretty sure there's a shed for gardening tools or something. What in the world could be going on in a place like that? Just as Jessica had said, they began to see a storehouse in front of them. They could also see the adults there. The shutter to the storehouse was open, and several adults looked as though they were searching for something. For some reason, only Natsu was outside the storehouse. Without even holding an umbrella, she looked like she was hanging her head, and her back was facing them. There was Genji, Nanjo, and Natsuhi, who had just left the mansion. The ones who'd left earlier, Kanon, Ava, and Hideyoshi, were also there, making for a small crowd of people. There was absolutely no bustle of activity. When Natsuhi realized that the children were approaching, a terrible expression rose to her face, and she ran at them with her arms spread wide. You mustn't come any closer! Go back to the mansion! But despite that, no, because of that, the kids saw the scene Natsuhi was trying to keep them away from. Inside the storehouse, with its shutter wide open, a faint fluorescent light shone down. And right there was... Jessica's piercing shriek rang out. But that was just because Jessica's scream was the loudest. The same thing spilled out of Battler and George's mouths as well. Oh my god, this song. Now is not an appropriate time, but this song. Ava spread her arms just like Natsuhi, roaring at the kids with a bone-chilling expression on her face. George, take everyone and return to the mansion. Quickly! Right now! When Natsuhi spread her arms, I thought she was trying to prevent us from advancing any further. But that wasn't why Ava was spreading her arms right now. She was trying to stop us kids from seeing that terrible scene. It was her mother's heart, trying to protect the eyes and hearts of us children by blocking our view of that terrible scene by at least the width of one of her arms. Is this some kind of joke? Is it? I'd seen this kind of cheap scene all too often. In manga, TV, and anime and movies, I'd seen it over and over again. This was just seeing something appear in real life that I'd seen plenty of times before in some of those more sensational movies. Right? That alone should... but that suit, that's those bastards, isn't it? I get it, then that's Uncle Kraus. And Kiri-san and Aunt Rosa. Dad! Dad! You mustn't, Jessica. You mustn't go in. You mustn't look. Dad! Dad! Ah! Rigor mortis has set in across almost the entire body. Most likely, 6 hours or more have passed since death. As far as I can tell by looking at the damaged area, there is a high probability that they were damaged after their deaths. No, I must watch what I say. I'm a general practitioner. Examining corpses is outside of my area of expertise. So what's going on here? just killing them wasn't enough, so they went on to do something like this. The devil. This here is the work of the devil. Aunt Nazi caught Jessica in her arms, and Aunt Ava caught George in it. I was the only one who could approach the entrance to the storehouse. Only there had been someone there to catch me too. I wouldn't have needed to have this horrible, evil scene burned into my eyes. No, that's not it. It isn't that there's no one here to catch me. The people who should catch me, they're right there, aren't they? Just as Jessica said, it did look like a storehouse for gardening tools. A lawn mower with extra blades, a grass sickle and a hammer, some carpentry tools such as a saw, piled up in potted plants and bags of fertilizer, and treated just the same. The corpses of several people had been laid to rest there. No, had been tossed in there. I could tell them by their clothes. That old bastard and Kiri-san, Uncle Kraus and Aunt Rosa. Beyond that, Goda-san and... Are there still more of them? How many people died? You're fucking kidding me! That's more than I can count on one hand, damn it! I don't know whether it had been one of these gardening tools, which if used for something other than their intended purpose, could definitely be wielded with a naked brutality. Or whether some horrible tool had been brought in here specifically for this. Anyway, each one of the bodies jammed in here had been given an atrocious makeup. It wasn't makeup, it was more like their faces had been plowed. Their faces were smashed, forced into expressions that normal people couldn't make even after death. I couldn't tell where the eyes or the noses were, but I could find their mouths because they were gaping wide, their gums exposed. Their front teeth were missing, and even the cheeks that should have covered all of this were torn up and laid bare. That trendy makeup you always spent so much time on, even though you're a man, isn't doing a thing now. Dad! I always thought you were going to help, but still not like this, right? You weren't such a son of a bitch that you should have had to suffer so brutally. Kiri-san, didn't I tell you to stop going out with this guy? There's absolutely no reason for you to end up like this too. I've got no faces. No faces. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it! Ah! Battlers, and you mustn't look anymore. There's no way your mother and father would want you to see them like this. For their sakes, you mustn't look anymore. Dead people are supposed to have faces that look like they're sleeping peacefully, right? They've got no faces! My dad and Kiri-san have no faces! I don't even know what kind of faces they were wearing when they died. What's wrong with me? Will I have to see these smashed, monster-like faces every time I remember them? That's just great. I didn't want to remember that old bastard's smug face anyway. Just great! Just great! Why even Kiri-san's face? Kiri-san wasn't a crook. Sure, she ticked me off a bit now and then, but she was like a cool big sister to me. This is wrong. This is all wrong. At least Uncle Kraus has it better, doesn't he? It's not his whole face, just the side. At least he's got half his face left, right? That's still better. That's still better. Jessica filled her ears with the sound of her own screaming, trying to shut out my reckless words. Stop it, Battler. Just stop it. Just stop it! Aniki. Aniki! Ah! Disregarding age and appearance, I fell to my knees, clinging to Aniki's waist and sobbing. It was as if I was crying on behalf of everyone there. Representing the feelings of everyone there, I screamed over and over. The Twilight, the first Twilight has claimed 6, chosen by the key. Oh my god. Father, the ones lying over there are Uncle Kraus, Uncle Rudolph, Aunt Kiri, and Aunt Rosa, and Goda-san. Just those 5, right? No. There are 6 people. There's one more person over here. The body Hideyoshi was looking down on now happened to be hidden among the shadows in that mountain range of objects. In a blind spot to George, who stood by the entrance. So George couldn't tell whose body it was. So George cursed himself. He cursed the fact that his worst guesses always turned out to be right. So the one lying at your feet is Shannon, isn't it? Yes. It's Shannon Chen. What does that sound? That sound... Oh shit. Servant Goda. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. His face seems to have been smashed after his death. How unfortunate. Apparently he was originally supposed to be on duty in the guest house. Servant Shannon. Her corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. It seems like the side of her head was smashed after her death. Don't worry. Everyone will be revived in the Golden Lands. Ushirmia Rosa. Her corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. Her face seems to have been smashed after her death. I'll get to see her again, so I don't feel lonely. What? What does that mean? Ushirmia Rudolph. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. His face seems to have been smashed after death. He has a right to lament his ill fortune. Sorry, my mouse is... Here we go. Ushirmia Kiri. Her corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. Her face seems to have been smashed after her death. She was chosen by the Demon's Roulette. That's all there is to it. Man. Ushirmia Kraus. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. The direct cause of death is unknown, but it seems the side of his head was smashed after his death. This is the beginning of everything. George fell completely silent. He shook slightly, his lower lip trembling. Normally, he would have wanted to run to his beloved's body, screaming and crying. However, before rashly rushing forward, he worked to keep his composure and asked his father, "Is Shannon the same as Uncle Kraus and the others?" Hideyoshi deeply understood the meaning of those words, so he couldn't give George an immediate answer. Or rather, he felt that silence was the only sincere and loving response he could give George right now. When George asked if Shannon was the same, he meant to ask whether her corpse was in the same condition as the others or not. Since Hideyoshi hadn't denied it, it meant her corpse was in the same brutal state. "Can I look at Shannon?" No, you can't.
Why not? After all, I won't be able to see Shannon's face again. Right? So, why won't you let me see what her face looked like at the end?
The last time you met Shannon Chan was yesterday, right?
Yes.
I see. When you left her, what kind of face was she showing you?
It was a wonderful smile. After he handed her the ring, she hesitated, even though she must have already made up her mind. Then she looked bashful and ran away because she was embarrassed to let him see her face looking like that. That's the expression that was revived in George's mind. I see. Then I'm sure Shannon Chan would want to leave you with that smile in your memory. Hideyoshi looked down upon Shannon's body lying at his feet. Just like the other bodies, it was in such a horrible state that it'd make anyone want to cover their eyes. Her head had been smashed in from the side, and no more than half of her expression still remained. If the remaining blood-soaked half of her expression had been wiped clean, would that graceful smile of hers have peeked out? But only half of it. Without thinking, Hideyoshi slapped his hands over his eyes. How brutal. Her face was going to be crushed anyway, then if only all of it had been crushed. He might have been able to temporarily distract George from his pain by making the pathetic suggestion that it was someone else wearing Shannon's clothes. But half of her face had been left untouched. It caused the body so much humiliation, while still proving beyond doubt that that body was Shannon's and no one else's. How inhuman, how brutish. And there, trying his best to burn the image of the remaining half of Shannon's expression into his eyes as she lay at Hideyoshi's feet, was Cannon. Cannon was not crying. Tears had risen to his eyes, but they did not drip down. But that didn't mean he wasn't feeling as much sadness as everyone else. Losing Shannon, who had lived with him in the same orphanage, whom he had loved as a sister, must have been just the same as losing a blood relative. George, I'm sure Shannon Chan is saying thank you. She must be glad you didn't end up seeing her in such a pitiful state. I'm sure she's thanking you for holding strong and showing restraint. I understand. I understand, Father. I understand. George leaned against the outside wall of the storehouse, crouching down limply. Father, I have a request.
What is it?
I want you to look for me. Is there a ring on her finger? Is she wearing a ring on her finger? A ring on Shannon's finger?
A ring? Let me see.
Hideyoshi crouched down. As he did, Cannon silently pointed to one of Shannon's hands.
Yeah, there is. It's a diamond ring. With a valuable diamond. Must have been pretty expensive.
And which hand? Which finger is it on?
The ring finger of her left hand. I see. So Shannon Chan was engaged?
Oh, shut the fuck up. George, don't tell me you... Ava, that doesn't matter now. A man made a lifelong promise to Shannon Chan. A man promised her happiness for life. Who that man was isn't the issue here. Being told that by a man is a woman's dream, isn't it? I don't know when she received this ring. I also don't know who gave it to her. However, even so, Shannon-chan took this ring. Then she accepted it and put it on her left ring finger. I'm sure the man who gave it to her was also happy. To most of the people there, Hideyoshi was simply disturbed by this extraordinary situation and was blurting out nonsense. However, someone who knew of George and Shannon's true relationship would understand the full meaning of those words. I see. Thank you, Father. George stood up. The traces of tears still streaked his face, but his expression had returned to its usual calm one. Let's go. Battler-kun, Jessica-chan. If we stay here any longer, we'll get in the way of the adults. You're right. Jessica sniffled once, showing her face to her mother, who had been holding her the whole time, to let her know she was okay now. When she faced George again, she once again had on her usual expression, although she still couldn't smile. Battler, hang in there. Battler kept on crouching in front of his parents' bodies. Oh, it hurts a lot because that's he's he doesn't treat Kiri like his mother, but it's still parents. Oh, and he lost both of them. He lost both of his parents. I'm sorry. Crying like hell calmed me down. You bastard, Dad. I bet you're laughing at me. After all that shit I talked about you, here I am crying like a baby just 'cause you died. Well, so what? I guess I just got the gene that makes you cry when your parents kick the bucket. Battler's face was still bright red from the tears, but he had at least recovered enough to fake a smile, if only a bitter one. God, what are they gonna tell Maria? Oh, and I hate that Rudolph was right. He said that he was gonna die, and I really didn't want to believe it, but I knew. I knew. Cannon, you mustn't remain here any longer either. Take the children and return to the mansion. Nati had been standing under the rain this whole time, unable to take a step into the storehouse. Maybe she had her own way of grieving, different from Battler's. Realizing that she had to take on the role of responsibility now that her husband was dead, she gave Cannon those orders. Sorry. Yes, madam. Cannon rose silently and turned to face me. His face was pure white, almost as though his own heart had died along with Shannon. And there was no life in his expression. On an ordinary day, if he had been told to guide the children through the beautiful rose garden, Cannon might have led the way. But now there was no distinction between Cannon and the children. They were now just kids of about the same age, suffering the pain of losing those close to them. After making sure that the children were leaving, Natsu started giving orders to Genji. Genji, contact the police immediately. Baby, the phones are cut off. You can't. The phones don't work. They probably won't be able to come until the typhoon passes. They should at least be able to tell us about what to do next. Understood. There's an emergency radio, so I'll use that to contact them. Okay. That makes sense then. When she heard that, Natsu remembered. That's right. The phones were out today, weren't they? However, they also had a radio. They couldn't necessarily rely on phones all the time while living on an isolated island. At any rate, they should start by contacting the police and receiving their instructions. Everything else could wait. Dr. Nanja, is there anything more you can do here? Unfortunately, there is nothing I can do. Understood. Genji, could you at least cover their faces with something? Exposing them like this is humiliating to them as well. Yes, ma'am. Genji picked up several dried up towels from inside the storehouse. When Ava stopped him with a shrill voice, "Wait a second. Stop. This is the scene of the crime, isn't it? Then we mustn't disturb it. We all panicked and walked in here with our shoes on, but even that will surely get in the way of the police's investigation, right?" Nazi glared at Ava, offended. Objectively speaking, Ava was right. Even so, she glared at Ava as though accusing her of refusing to do those tragic corpses which had been humiliated even after death. The simple kindness of covering their faces. However, Ava had spoken both calmly and correctly. This horrible situation definitely wasn't an accident. It was a crime. Someone had killed them. It was a murder case. So they needed to be careful to avoid disturbing the site any further. They had to do what little they could to aid the police, preserving clues that might help catch the detestable culprit. I agree with Ava-san. Until the police come, we should leave everything be. What do you say, madam? You're right. Very well. Close it up. And just in case, we should put a different lock on it. A different lock? Yes. When we came here, the shutter was locked. That means the culprit used the key to the shutter to lock it. That makes sense. So does that mean the key that opens the shutter will have the culprit's fingerprints on it? I'm sure it will be worth submitting to the police as evidence. But Cannon-kun usually has it, and he used it to unlock the shed just now. It'll probably have Cannon's fingerprints on it. Also, that key was handed to Genji-san just now, and he took it with his bare hands. Doesn't look like it'll be very useful as evidence. That was careless of me. My apologies. Genji-san, are there any other keys to the storehouse? No. Only this one. So the culprit walked out of the servant room with that key, and then was nice enough to return the key to where they found it. Hideyoshi's theory sounded plausible, but was actually very strange if you thought about it. Why would they go through all the trouble of returning a key they stole? No, if you think about it even more deeply, there are some points that are even more bizarre. When a criminal hides a body, they're usually trying to delay the point at which it'll be found so they can use that time to escape. The six weren't necessarily killed here, but it was reasonable to assume that they were killed somewhere on this island, carried to the storehouse, and hidden to delay the discovery of the crime. And yet, the eerie magic circle scribbled on the storehouse shutter had eloquently indicated the location of the hidden corpses. Sure, it didn't explicitly mention the corpses, but 6 people had gone missing. In that situation, someone had made such an obvious piece of graffiti and even returned the key to the shutter. Almost as though they wanted the corpses here to be discovered. Anyway, we can't put all our faith in the lock that the culprit has opened once before. We want to protect this place from the culprit's hands. I think we should put a new lock on it. I think that is a good plan. I agree. Genji fished around inside the storehouse and unsealed a brand new padlock that had been inside a small box. What should I do with the key? I will take it. I will take responsibility and hand it over to the police. Natsu took the key to the padlock from Genji's hand. After that, they all exited and lowered the shutter. And so, the corpses were once again sealed behind that shutter, which was still covered with that creepy magic circle. Oh, man. Genji crouched down in front of the shutter to fasten the new padlock. Shutters often have a place in front where you can attach your own lock, in addition to the main lock of the shutter. This was one of those types. In the midst of the roar of thunder and the pouring rain, the storehouse stood there, ominously, with its closed shutter still covered in a blood-like, creepy substance that swallowed up the bodies of the 6. The Nazi, putting the new lock on wasn't mainly to preserve the scene for the police. She might have felt like she wanted to shut that mouth for all eternity. To prevent that eerie beast from swallowing up any more victims. Come on, let's go, everyone. Dr. Nancho, thank you very much for your work. Genji, hurry and contact the police. I will do so as soon as I return. The adults left the storehouse. The ghastly magic circle drawn on the shutter kept the 6 bodies in its throat, looming eerily as the lightning occasionally lit it up. It's not quite 9:45 or 10:45. No, it's not. It's not quite 9:45. It's not quite 9. It's 8:45. Ooh, I don't know why that was such a struggle. All that could be heard was the sound of the rain, the voices from the kids' TV program Maria was watching, and the engrossed Maria's cackling voice. In other words, what greeted them as they returned dumbfounded from that horrible, bizarre scene was the voice of Maria as she rolled around laughing at the TV. God, how are they gonna tell her? Those who returned to the room didn't know how to explain to Maria that her mother was dead, and were trapped by a suffocating silence. At first, Maria returned their stares with a dubious look. But when she realized they weren't trying to blame her for anything, she ignored them and again immersed herself in the TV program. The children wordlessly sat down heavily on the sofa. Their minds were probably blank from their state of shock. Everyone had already cried and mourned so much, but now they just vaguely sat there, their faces seeming to have lost all emotion. Only Cannon had returned to his usual calm expression. However, that probably didn't mean he'd been able to wipe out the shock. Nothing was reflected in his eyes as he stared into empty space. Hideyoshi kept on fidgeting, and every time he remembered that horrible scene, he started muttering about how he couldn't believe it, how it couldn't have been something from this world, how it must have been the work of demons. Every now and then his muttering produced a question directed at Nanjo. But the latter kept repeating in a calm, doctor-like manner that nothing could be understood by only glancing at the scene. And that, until the police arrived, they wouldn't learn anything. However, Nanjo only appeared calm next to Hideyoshi, who simply couldn't suppress his agitation and fear. In fact, Nanjo had also received a huge shock, and his face was deathly pale. Maybe that atmosphere was why she tried to rise to the challenge and take charge. Natsu had appeared to be unchanged from her normal attitude. And she briskly gave directions. I will go see father. Genji, quickly contact the police. Certainly. I wonder if you would allow me to tag along, Natsuhi-Nisa. Since Kraus-Nisan is now gone, the task of aiding father has been left to me. It would be improper of me to relax here while relying entirely on you. Natsuhi was struck speechless by Ava's aggressive move in a situation like this. She seemed to be claiming that, with Kraus dead, the one to take responsibility shouldn't be his wife, but herself, the next highly ranked in the family. Or maybe she hadn't been all that happy when Natsuhi took command without reference to her in such an extreme situation. However, even Ava's mind had been blank from shock until a moment ago. She only came to her senses after Natsuhi started giving orders. Just do as you like. Natsuhi started walking without saying a word more. Ava followed behind her. As they did, Kumasawa ran into the parlor. She usually wasn't the kind of person to run around, so under normal conditions, most people would have taken her entrance as a sign that something was the matter. But because everyone was still stricken with shock, they hardly even noticed her. Does she know what happened? Does she know what happened? Oh god, does Kumasawa know? Madam. If you're looking for Natsuhi-Nisan, she went to see father. She'll probably be back soon. What happened, Kumasawa-san? You see, in the dining hall there was blood. Blood. The ears of everyone in the parlor twitched. Everyone thought the same thing. I hope I misheard that. Any container can only hold so much. No one here would be capable of handling yet another tragedy. So they all thought it. I hope I misheard that. What happened in the dining hall? When I went to the dining hall to set up for breakfast, I don't know how to make that sound. The first one to start running was George. His harsh footsteps jogged Hideyoshi and Nanjo to their senses, and they chased after him. Battler and the others followed. They flew into the dining hall one after another, but they didn't find any change that might have caused Kumasawa to go pale. To those who had viewed that gruesome scene in the storehouse, it was a bit of an anticlimax. However, Kumasawa, who had followed them, pointed it out. There really were some traces of blood remaining on the floor. Compared to that terrible scene, it wasn't very impressive. However, if you calmly thought about it, this definitely indicated the loss of a lot of blood. There's another puddle of blood over here. What in the world? It appears that a great deal of time has passed. Probably safe to say that they were killed here last night. It definitely looks that way. We were talking together in the dining hall until late into the night. After that, someone must have forced their way in. Dad, when did you and Mom slip out of the meeting and go to sleep? It was a little past midnight. So, you should probably assume it happened after that. Are you kidding me? Give me a break. My lady, please stay strong. After seeing that hell on earth in the storehouse, this is nothing. Really good for you. I feel like my head's gonna explode. This is the dining hall, right? Every day, this is where I eat, complain about school, complain about homework, talk to my dad about my grades. That's what this place is to me. My lady, it wouldn't be good to remain here any longer. Let's return to the parlor. I agree. Uncle Hideyoshi, I think this room will be really important to the police. Don't you think it'd be bad if we trampled all over it? Battler proposed this in a slightly firm voice as, along with Cannon, he grabbed a pail and shaking Jessica's shoulders. Everything is just as Battler-san has said. There is nothing more to be gained from remaining in this room. Nanjo spoke while looking at everyone's pale faces. Even though that horrible scene in the storehouse felt like something not of this world. At least then we'd be able to leave, to get ourselves off from that place, and to run away. Everyone had shared in that feeling. However, this dining hall was different. It was in the mansion, the main building on this estate, and as Jessica had said, it should have been one of the most calming places even inside the mansion. It was where all of the relatives had eaten lunch and dinner yesterday. The shock of seeing this place smeared with blood reminded us of that horrible spectacle in the storehouse, and forced us to accept that we hadn't really been able to run away from the scene of that tragedy. I agree too. The culprit might have left traces in this room. Amateurs like us shouldn't stir the place up. Let's leave quickly. Quickly. Hideyoshi also understood the meaning of what Battler had said, and pushed everyone to hurry out of the dining hall. That way, when we were then looking at that body any longer, it would have been too harsh. Nobody went against his words. Everyone raced each other out of the dining hall. It was almost as though the last person in the room would be trapped in there, all alone. Once in the hallway, we lent a hand to Kumasawa, who was still trembling and leaning against the wall, and we all headed back to the parlor together. Then, Genji returned. Oh, Genji-san, were you able to contact the police? As to that, I'm afraid I must apologize. I don't know if it was a failure of the radio or something else that caused it, but... What the... So you couldn't contact the police? Both the phone and the radio failed? My apologies. A boat will be arriving on Monday morning, and I believe we will be able to borrow their communications equipment. Isn't there a boat on this island? Can't we just take a little trip out to the Nijiba Police Department? Hideyoshi-san, that would be impossible with this weather. At the very least, we can't do anything until the typhoon passes us by. Kurao-sama's boat is being repaired and is not on the island. Therefore, we must wait for the boat coming on Monday. How could this happen? 6 people are dead. The phones and radio aren't working and there's no boat. So until the typhoon passes and the boat comes, in other words, until tomorrow morning, we're gonna be stuck here on this island, unable to contact the police. Aren't we? Which means that not just us, but the criminal who is also confined to this island. That certainly follows. culprit who killed everyone is still here on this island. So the bastard who killed Dad and the others must still be hiding somewhere, unable to escape. Damn it! Damn it, damn it, damn it! I'll catch that bastard. No way I'll hand him over to the police. I'll slice it to bits myself. Ah! Maria. Oh, baby. Poor girl doesn't know her mom is dead. Maria had finally realized that something odd was happening in the parlor. Rather than noticing something odd, it was probably better to say she felt unhappy and neglected, since everyone was getting so excited about something only she didn't know about. Oh, honey, that is not the case. Jessica, honey-chan, did someone die? Whoa! Hold on, what is this? What is this? Oh, whoa, hold on, hold it. The way she spoke was completely calm, just as though she was talking about someone who had appeared on a television drama, as though it was someone else's problem. Jessica probably didn't like that, as though trying to say, can't you tell just by looking at me, overwhelmed with grief? She flared up at Maria. They all died. Everyone. My dad and Battler's parents, Goda-san and Shannon, and even your mother too. Stop it, Jessica-chan. You aren't the only one who's sad. Maria-san, I know this will come as a shock, but please listen. Your mother has died. Mama died? Who? Yeah, someone killed her. I know it's sad, but stay strong. How many people died? 6 people. 6 people. Damn it. How could anyone do something that cruel? There's a limit to how cruel you can be if you're human. I don't know who it is, but the culprit isn't human. There's no way their blood is red. The culprit isn't human. It's just the... chosen by the... What? Huh? Hey, Maria, did you say something just now? Maria had just said something, but since the words were so remotely separated from the flow and context of the conversation, I couldn't understand them for a second. When I tried to ask her to repeat it again, I was shocked by the sudden sound of Aunt Natsu's loud voice coming from the entrance to the parlor. It looked like Aunt Natsu and Aunt Ava had returned from their trip to see grandfather. You can't contact them even with the radio? We can't use it at a time like this. Why do we even have an emergency radio? My apologies. It was supposed to have a maintenance inspection every year. Why don't you have one of those boat signaling devices that makes a flashing light? Couldn't you use that to contact the next island? We do not have such equipment. My sincere apologies. Just then, Kumasawa arrived, pushing a serving cart loaded with breakfast. Since there was no way we'd be able to eat in the dining hall, Hideyoshi had ordered her to take it to the parlor. Why are we eating breakfast here? Natsu-san, I'll tell you later. More importantly, Ava, how is father? Judging by the fact that he is not with you, it seems he will not leave his room, not even for a situation like this. Well, he's partially the, cause for this. He wasn't there. The room was empty. Uh-oh. I heard a... Ushimiya Kenzo disappeared from his study unnoticed. Kenzo's study is everything from a bed to a toilet to a bathtub, so it was extremely rare for him to go outside. However, he does occasionally go out for a walk on a whim without telling anybody, and his disappearance invariably leads up to a huge uproar throughout the house. He usually comes back as soon as he gets hungry. Usually. Okay, 6 dead, 1 missing. What the? Where could he have gone at a time like this? Do you mean to say the master has left his study? That is correct. I was surprised myself. I wonder when he left his room. Do any of you have an idea? Natsuki looked at Genji and Kanon as she said this. Maybe she was trying to ask whether the servants who served directly under the One-Winged Eagle knew of a place he might go. However, it was probably the other way around. Their faces made it clear that those who knew Kenzo best realized even more than the rest how impossible it was for him to leave his room. Even we have no idea. As you all know, within that study, the master had everything from a place to sleep to a bathroom. I couldn't imagine him leaving that room except for a significant reason. In that case, what? Isn't it natural to assume that one of those significant reasons came up? We still cannot be certain that's the case. Anyway, he is a fickle person, so it's possible he went for a walk by himself, unaware of the current situation. Well, he might have went for a walk, but he probably isn't unaware of the situation. If that is the case, then we must act in all haste to tell him what has happened and ask for instructions. That's right. Although I don't want to think about it, it's possible something has happened to him, isn't it? I'd rather not even consider such a sinister possibility. No one had seen Kenzo since the discovery of those 6 terrible corpses. On top of that, the phones were broken, the radio wouldn't reach anyone, and there was no way to contact the police. Apparently, the typhoon would leave tomorrow and a boat would come. But until then, no one could rely on anyone outside the island, nor could they escape the island. Well, I think that's a good place to leave off. I am properly devastated and a little horrified, and I'm really hoping my microphone didn't peak too much during the beginning. I need a better microphone than the one I have, so I don't sound like total shit, because I'm sure you guys noticed how shit my microphone sounds. Thank you for watching. I'm sure the Demon's Roulette will continue on next episode, and I hope you come back next time, and maybe we'll reach the Golden Land. Thanks a lot. Bye.